Okay, so this is a little bit about standard deviation. Um, Standard deviation basically is a measure of spread that talks about how far the numbers are spread from the set of numbers. So, in other words, it's the average of the squared difference from the mean. Okay, um, there's an easy way to do it in terms of using your calculator. You can see here I have an emulation running of the calculator that it's similar to the calculator that we use in class. So let me show you how you actually would go about working out the standard deviation from a set of numbers. So you'll see here I have two sets of numbers, two different suburbs. They have their fuel prices at different service stations throughout. So here's suburb A over here and suburb B just here, and they're different fuel prices. Let me get that calculator back. Okay, so the way that you do standard deviation on your calculator is as follows. Let me show you. First thing we need to do is get it into the right mode to do what we want. So you click on the mode button there, and it brings up three choices. We don't want computation, that's just what we normally do. We want statistics. So you'll hit number 2. What we want is we just want one variable. So we will hit number 1 for this one variable, and it will give us this little weird sort of table where we can put information in. So each of our numbers now go into this grouping. Okay, so our first one, 93.9. Once you've got that number in, you just hit equals, and you'll see it appears as the first piece of information in our table of data. Okay, so I'm just wondering if I can use my keyboard to make this quicker. 97.9, and we'll hit equals. 92.4, and we'll hit equals. 93.9, and we'll hit equals. 98.5 equals. 92.3 equals. 97.9 equals, and 99.9 equals. So it'll tell us automatically that we've got 8 bits of information in here, which we can double check and say, yep, we do. We have 8 pieces of data that we needed to account for. Once I'm done with that, I can just clear that. It's stored in the calculator's memory. So I'll clear that. Now what we want to do is we actually want to get to the information about our data. To do that, what we need to do is hit the shift button and then the number 1. You'll see the word stat written above there. Now the type of information that we're looking for is to do with variance, because that's really what the standard deviation is. So we'll hit 5. We've got some choices here. You may not have seen things written in this sort of fashion before. N is just the number. If we press 1 and hit equals, well, we had 8 numbers. That's an easy one. Okay, so let's clear that, and we'll go back into our statistical information, back into the variance. This one here, the X with the bar across the top, if we choose that and go equal, that actually gives us the mean, or the average of those 8 bits of data. Okay, that's the average. And in fact, we could double check that. If we're in here in Excel, if we type average, and then we choose our range and hit equals, then you'll see that it's the same number, because that is the average. That's the average for our information. Also, I'm kind of showing you how to do this in Excel at the same time, so that's kind of handy too. If you don't have your calculator, you can do it on the computer. Next thing we want to have a look at, we go Shift 1 back into our variance, is this one here. This funny little circle symbol is actually one of those Greek letters. We've used lots of these Greek letters in the past. We used theta all the time when we were doing angles. Well, this one is called sigma. And our sigma is what we use to represent standard deviation. So we want number 3 here, and we'll hit equals, and we get that our standard deviation for our information was actually 2.87. Now again, I just want to show you something real quick. If we go back into here, you'll see that there are two types. There's this one, the X sigma n, or the X sigma n minus 1. Now the n minus 1 is if you're doing the standard deviation on a sample population, whereas the X sigma n is if you have the complete population, which we do right now. That's why we want that one. Okay, so we can do that on Excel as well. Let me show you. If you type in equals std, and you'll see it's little, but you'll see that there's a .p and there's a .s. Well, .s represents the sample. .p represents the whole population, which is what we have. So if we select this whole population and hit enter, it will spit out the standard deviation, which is exactly the same as what our calculator would do. Okay, so that's the way that you would calculate standard deviation on your calculator, and also how to do it on Excel. So we can, and honestly, the calculator is a little bit slower. Excel can do it a bit quicker. So let's have a look at this second lot of information, and we'll work out the standard deviation for the population of this second suburb. And you can see we get some difference. Now, the smaller that those numbers are around the standard deviation, so the smaller the variance, that means the closer each thing is to the mean. Okay, so each of those different numbers are to the mean. So we have a standard deviation for the second suburb. So what we can say about that second suburb is that the cost of fuel, if that was the fuel prices, have a smaller deviation from the average. Okay, so if we were to work out the average for this, I didn't actually work that out. Average of this group of information, you will see, even though it's slightly higher on average, you have a less standard deviation, so it's probably a more stable price. Okay.